So welcome everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces. My name is Lindsay Daly. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the program director and co-founder of the Oak Granary, which is a small nonprofit based in Potter Valley. And yeah, as Hannah mentioned, we have been involved for the last couple years in a collaboration between the Oak Granary, the Hopland Research and Extension Center, and the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District, and kind of looking at how we can help the land recover from the Redwood complex, which now just feels like ages ago, many fires ago, but plenty of lessons to be learned from this work that are relevant more and more all the time. So this project is called the Road to Recovery, and it involved, it's ongoing, and we've been doing various kinds of work, riparian restoration, rebuilding of roads to fish-friendly standards. And then the piece that we've been working on specifically is around planting acorns and helping the oak woodlands recover. So let's see here. There we go. So the first question, here's a little overview of what we're going to cover today. Real briefly, we'll talk about why oaks and learn a little bit about acorn identification, some tips on gathering and sorting acorns, and then we'll talk about our Acorn Bank and the drop-off sites and open it up for questions. So before we get too deeply into that, I just want to start off by thanking both some of my teachers as well as the long-term stewards of this land, and by thanking the First Nations and Native Californians that have been in relationship with and stewarded oak woodlands for many millennia. And it's thanks to their very sophisticated land management that we have the oak woodlands that we have today, which require human interaction to be at their best. And it's not a topic we'll talk about a ton today, but if anyone's interested in learning more about acorns, I highly recommend Julia Parker's book, It Will Live Forever. I had a chance to sit with and learn from Julia, who's a renowned basket weaver, and it's an amazing resource on acorns as food from Native Californian perspective. And then I also just want to give thanks. Here in the bottom right, you'll see a photo of, those are some of the oaks of Spain, where some of my ancestry is from, and I had a chance to go study there a few years ago and learn about how my ancestors have stewarded oaks for many millennia as well. And gosh, it sure looks like California, doesn't it? No wonder I love oaks. They're definitely, if anyone here has ancestry from North America, Asia, Europe, or North Africa, your ancestors also were or still are in relationship with stewarding oaks. So pretty cool universal plant, which is one of the reasons why I love them. But oops, let's go back. Sorry, this image isn't great, but another answer to the question of why oaks, one is just their universality as a really important plant culturally throughout the world. And this is an image, it's a little bit fuzzy, from Good Nature Publishing Company. They have a beautiful poster that depicts some of the plant and animal life native to the California oak woodlands. And yeah, California oak woodlands are the most important terrestrial ecosystem in California for biodiversity. And as a student of the land and someone who's been asking the question for a long time of how to be in better relationship with land and with place, I've come back to time and again that planting an acorn is one of the things that you can do if you care about life and you want to see, all these beautiful creatures thrive. Taking care of an oak tree is about one of the safest things you can do. Ecosystems are so complex, and there's so many ways that we can have unintended consequences, and planting an oak is pretty much a pretty safe thing to do. So yeah, if as far as biodiversity, taking care of our oak trees is just a really powerful act in this time. So yeah, talking about our project in particular in Redwood Valley, I want to highlight real briefly that we are planting back in the upper reaches of the West Fork of the Russian River in the Tomkide Creek area. And we're focusing on these listed species here for collection: black oak, interior live oak, blue oak, valley oak, and Oregon white oak. And we're gonna kind of jump into identification here to kind of help share some tools with you to help you build your pattern recognition in your eyes that can learn how to identify different species of oaks. So this is a resource from Kate Marienchild, who's a local author and speaker, and she has on her website, I believe it's katemarienchild.com, you can purchase these oak identification charts, and they're super handy little field guides. But I'm going to just walk you through some of kind of the key pattern recognition tools that you can utilize to identify oaks. One thing I'll say before we get too deeply in is that oaks hybridize. They're very promiscuous, and so it can get a bit tricky to identify them because as they hybridize, the property or their leaf morphology changes quite quickly. So the shape of the leaf is one tool for identifying oaks, but it's really the acorns that have all the clues for us. So, you know, I can give you some kind of big picture tools, and then you will learn more and more as I am that oaks just hybridize and they're very difficult to identify, and that's okay. Yeah, so we're going to start with an oak here in the red oak family, or I'm sorry, the red oak subgenera. Over here on the left, can you all see my pointer, my mouse? Someone want to give me a thumbs up and not, yeah, you can see it? Okay, cool. Right in here is, this is a leaf of a black oak. And it's got a few properties on it that are very distinct and very easy to learn to identify. So if you take a look at these deep sinuses here, the sinus is the part of this curve that kind of goes in towards the center of the leaf. And this is the lobe that comes out. The black oak has, it has pointy spikes on the end of its lobes. Oops, let me go back. See those little pointy bits there? And that's distinct from, for example, a live oak over here that does have spikes on the tips of its lobes, but it doesn't have the deep sinuses. So this leaf is really quite distinct. You can, once you kind of are paying attention to the leaf shape, you'll really be able to pick that out pretty easily. And the acorn, this is a black oak acorn, and black oaks are revered as one of the delicious, higher in fat and oils, very tasty, nutty, beautiful acorn to eat. The scales on the acorn are kind of, they're flat and scaly. So the red oak subgenera has all of the acorns you can see are kind of flat and scaly. But the black oak in particular, the cup on this acorn goes down quite a ways. It can go down, you know, on the one on the left is maybe a third, covering a third of the acorn, and this one's covering over half. So if you get, you know, those two clues, if you're looking at the leaf and you see big lobes, deep sinuses, and the lobes are bristly on the tip, and you have a scaly acorn, you can be pretty darn sure you're looking at a black oak acorn. And you know, you start to get familiar also with, in your area, what are the kinds of habitat clues that will tell you which kind of oak that you're looking at. For example, on where I live in Potter Valley, which is pretty dry and arid, we tend to see more black oaks and kind of the more mixed conifer, and also in the, you know, along the creeks and kind of in the wetter areas. And that will definitely be a clue for you as well, as far as how to identify oaks. So black oak is one that we're really looking for this year. They, different oaks have maturation times for their acorns of either 1 year or 2 years, and black oaks take 2 years to mature. So that means that we don't necessarily, we have fewer black oak acorns every year because they're on kind of a 2-year cycle. And I haven't seen a really solid drop of black oak acorns in a few years. So I'm hoping that it might look better this year. We really want to get some planted out there. I'd be curious if maybe folks would be up for typing in the chat if you've been out looking for acorns or noticing already sort of what's producing well in your area. If you'd be willing to maybe type that into your chat, that would be really great to take a peek at towards the end of this, just to see what folks are noticing out on the land. All right, so that was black oak. We're gonna real briefly go over interior live oak, which is this one here. The Coastlife Oak and the interior live oak hybridize, and they can be tricky to identify, but really habitat is going to be your best clue. So for example, in the Anderson Valley, that's kind of an area where I see Coastlife Oak meeting interior live oak and see a lot of hybrids. But once you get further inland, you're really going to be in interior live oak country. So the live oaks are a bit easier to identify. Really, if you're in inland Mendocino County and you're just looking for these kind of small, flat little leaves with tiny little spikes on the end, you got some kind of live oak, and it's probably going to be interior live oak over coast live oak. It could be a canyon live oak, but you get this nice clue of kind of the yellow underside of the leaf and a very distinct looking acorn. So just for the purposes of our seed collection project for this planting, I would say if you've got anything that's got a small leaf with without much in the way of sinuses and lobes and a bit of a pokey tip, you've got some kind of live oak, and that's probably good enough for the purposes of this project. If you want to nerd out and go more deeply in, this is a great guide to take you there, but I'm going to just move along so make sure that we can cover everything. So we're going to move into the subgenera of the white oaks, and that includes over here on the left the valley oak, and the Oregon white oak, and the blue oak. And these three all like to hybridize also very promiscuously. So again, the more I learn about oaks, the more, it's very rare that, not very rare, but it's quite common to see an oak and say, yep, that's a hybrid of, because they can hybridize pretty infinitely. So you say, oh, I think that's an Oregon white oak, valley oak hybrid of some degree. And that's just one of the very cool things about oaks. One thing I love about Kate Marion Child's ID chart here is that you can identify these three oaks based on what kinds of galls show up on their leaves. So this will show you, the particular gall, which is a little centipede wasp, which creates these incredible little formations on the underside or top side of the leaves here. And if you can identify those, you very often can know what species of oak you're looking at. Anyway, that's getting too nerdy. I gotta cruise on here. Valley oaks are very kind of iconic in bottomlands, like big, fertile bottomland kind of valleys. They're the only oak that really likes to have their feet kind of in the water table. Sometimes they're called swamp oaks for that reason. You'll see them kind of in wetland habitat. Sometimes you'll see them up on ridges and on hills too, and often I wonder if that's a clue that there's water, more water available in that particular kind of uplands location. But the main thing you're looking for here is that you've got, in this case, a deep sinus and lobe, but no bristle tip on the end like the black oak. And then their acorn, this is hard to tell in terms of scale, but their acorn can be very large, and the largest of all the California oaks, and they can be up to 2+ inches, and they're kind of long and tapered. The Oregon white oak is, the leaf is similar, but you'll notice that the shape of the sinus here is a little bit more kind of diagonal compared to like a big, deep, wide U. So that's really the difference in the leaves here. And then if you notice the acorn, the Oregon white oak has kind of a plumper, rounder look, and they kind of bulge out the side of their cups here. And then if we cruise over to look at the blue oak, the leaves really don't have the deep sinus and lobe at all. And they have almost like a bluish color to them, which is of course how they get their name. And they're found in typically much hotter, drier, kind of south-facing slope type of habitat, although more and more we're not seeing them on south-facing slopes because they're having a difficult time regenerating. So if you want to hop online, there's a version of this on Kate's website that you can print. It has like a watermark on it, but those are available. And this will be a good guide to take you through your oak identification when you're out there gathering. So I'm going to move on to gathering and sorting. The first thing I want to touch on real briefly is just timing of when we're gathering acorns. So really starting around August, probably some of you have noticed that acorns are starting to drop. And you'll often see the immature acorns or damaged acorns, very small ones start to drop, and it's kind of the tree's way of conserving their energy and letting go of the seeds that are not going to be viable. And then I would say, it depends on the year, but in the month of September, often we'll see kind of the first big drop of more damaged acorns, and typically acorns damaged with weevils, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then we'll start to see the good drop coming in starting now, and it'll keep going. And ideally, we would love to be gathering a couple rains is okay, light rain, but once it really starts raining, those acorns are going to receive the signal from Mother Nature that it's time to start germinating, and they can also start to mold. So really the best time to gather is kind of after the weevil-y drop and before the big rains come, because of course we want to be planting when the big rains come so that our acorns and their taproots can take advantage of that first big rain to start their life cycle and get their roots down to take advantage of the water. So the time is now. And as you're gathering, this is just a photo on the left of a basket of, I think probably mostly Oregon white oak with some blue oak acorns in there. And, often I'll go just kind of try to find places that are clear of the understory, or I'm sorry, not understory, but debris, leaves, things like that. Dirt roads are nice, good places to collect. Parks and lawns are often good places because it's easier to see them and pick them up. And then you're going to want to go through and sort them. And there are a lot of different ways to do this, actually. One is just using visual cues. And I really like this method because it requires that I actually touch and look at every single acorn, which I think is pretty cool, to have that kind of intimacy with these seeds. So I'll go through visually and I'll look for evidence of acorn weevil damage, such as an exit hole, or you can, I'll show you a picture in just a minute of what some of this looks like. So acorn weevil damage is a big one. Mold, or if the cap is still on, that will often mold underneath. And so that's one to toss out as well. And small or kind of immature looking ones, not fully formed, also can be left for the critters. And one of the reasons, of course, that acorns are so, or oaks are so amazing for biodiversity is that everybody eats acorns, from the tiniest acorn weevil all the way up to the black bear and everybody in between. It's like feast time on the land. So, leaving the acorns that are not good for human eating or for sprouting to grow out will leave a feast for all the other critters. And it might just be worth saying in this one too that, because acorns are such important food for everybody out there, really only gather what, you're committed to planting back, so that the rest can stay for everyone else. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about, I call them acorn weevils. They're filbert weevils or filbert worms, and I forget their Latin name. But there are two in particular that are pretty harsh on our oaks here in California. If you look on the left here is, this one is very obvious. You have a giant exit hole. You open up the acorn and there you see the larva and you see all that brown frass, which is the excrement of the little larva as it's cruising around inside of that acorn and gobbling it up. If you see anything like this, it's a damaged acorn. These sometimes will sprout. They just tend to have a lower success rate. So it's not the end of the world, you know, if you plant an acorn with some weevil damage, but you will likely have a lower success rate. Here's a picture on the top where that is a little bit more subtle. And oftentimes you actually won't even see the exit hole. I don't have a photograph of it, but you'll see like a little bump, which is actually where the mother weevil drilled into the acorn when it was immature to lay her eggs, and then it kind of heals up a little bit as it grows. But if you run your finger over it, you really feel the bump. So you can look out for those too. And again, I think it's a really great tool to kind of build your skill around paying attention to these amazing plants if you have to like turn each one over and examine it and look for weevil damage. And here's a picture on the bottom right. I just wanted to point out that Native Californians are very sophisticated in their management of oaks, and a big reason that fire has been used in oak woodlands is to manage the acorn weevil population. So traditionally oaks are burned under to reduce the habitat where acorn weevils overwinter. And this is a photo from a prescribed fire that I was on up at Redwood National Park. And it was very cool to actually see this duff kind of under ground cover where the acorn weevils overwinter. If that is burned off and that habitat is reduced, there are fewer acorn weevils. And there's some pretty fascinating things about how fire kind of overlaps and coincides with their life cycle. But you can see here, there's a little picture of a little weevil exit hole on this acorn, but it was pretty cool to get in there and see, you know, low intensity prescribed fire working to burn the buggy acorns and to reduce the habitat. Okay, another tool that folks use for sorting out acorns is using what's called the float test, where you gather up the acorns and then you put them in a bucket of water, and the floating acorns are the ones that are not viable. And this is a great tool for if you've got really large quantities. The couple things that I think are maybe just something to consider with this is that, I mean, if you're eating them, this will be just adding more moisture to drying them out to, you know, to save them and store them. But if you're planting them back also, the moisture can kind of trigger the signal to the seed that the rains have come and it's time to start germinating. So, you know, if you use the float test and you get your seeds wet, then you're going to probably want to plant them out sooner because they might start that germination process more quickly. Let's see here. So moving on to the Acorn Bank, Hopland Research and Extension Center has been very graciously working on this piece of the project where we put the call out to volunteers to help us gather acorns to plant back. And HREC is hosting the storage at their site. And there's a link here that will take you to more information on their website about the Acorn Bank, and it has some great tips on how to gather and sort and identify acorns. And then here's a list of our different drop sites where if you're gathering acorns, you can bring them to drop off, and then they'll make it down to the cold storage at Hopland until it's time to plant back. So we have one in Potter Valley, one in downtown Ukiah, one in kind of the north end of Redwood Valley, and then HREC itself. And all these details are on the HREC website. We just ask folks to, you know, to just drop in the boxes and wear a mask, and then we'll do pickups to make sure that they get stored. And then I do want to say that this year we are hoping to, it's been amazing to see the outpouring of support. And I think that there's just something really powerful about gathering seeds. I know it's one of my favorite times of year. And people have been really enthusiastic and willing to participate in in large quantities. So we have had lots of acorns, and this year we're actually going to have sort of an acorn giveaway at the end of our, once we sort of figured out what we're going to plant back. We're going to create some information to kind of help empower folks with, you know, it's very straightforward planting an acorn. Actually, it turns out you just kind of pick a good site for it and put it in the ground, and then they do the rest of the work. But we're going to release or create some information just to support folks in that. And one of the big things that these little seedlings need is a little bit of protection as they get going, because there's a lot of pressure on them from rodents and ungulates that want to eat them up as they sprout and grow. So yeah, we're going to put some information out about how to plant and help your young seedling thrive, and we'll be giving back the rest of the acorns that we don't plant to the community so that people can get out and do some planting of their own. And let's see. Yeah, this is a picture of my dear friend Gretchen Irwin, who was our superstar volunteer last year. She came to every single planting day that we had. I think last year we planted, we worked on 4 or 5 different land bases, and you can see she's planting into this little cage that's actually protection from rodents who like to nibble on the fresh sprouts. And this year we actually won't be able to plant with volunteers because of COVID-19, but we have an amazing crew of folks coming together to get all these acorns out and planted that y'all are hopefully gonna help us collect. So I think that's it on time. I hope that's the right timing there, Hannah.
Yeah, that was absolutely perfect, Lindsay.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, what we're going to do now is just take a few minutes. We've got some great questions in the chat, and folks are welcome to add their questions at this point. But Lindsay, if it's all right, so I'll moderate the chat and I'll bring the questions to you if that's okay, and help.
That sounds great.
So one of the questions which has come up a few times and is so important is, why is it yourself and myself and not members of our Indigenous native communities representing this project, given that they certainly have the greatest depth of knowledge on this subject?
That is a great question. Yeah, this is definitely an area that there's ongoing work, and I had a lot of thoughts myself about asking my friend Corinne Pierce if she was available and wanted to do this, and reached out to her, but we didn't make it to connect. And you know, it's something that is absolutely the important question to be asking. And I wish I had a better answer for it other than we're working on it. And, you know, that there's a lot of room for improvement. So yeah, definitely in relationship building mode, and working on, you know, finding better ways to center Indigenous voices and in this project for sure.
I'm also just sticking my email address in the chat. So if anybody wants to reach out, if you're interested in getting involved, I mean, beyond the collection of the acorns, we would love to be working with you. And I'm sure that there are ways that we can consider, especially looking into the future, other projects to be working together on. So I really appreciate that being raised.
Yeah, I will say also just one more thing really briefly. I have been coordinating with a few local tribes, looking at maybe potentially being able to hire our crew from talking to Hopland tribe, and reached out to a few other tribes about seeing if they have staff that's available to actually be the folks that are out and paid to do the work. So that is a conversation, and a big part of the work that I'm really committed to. And I work for a collaboration in Lake County that's bringing together Forest Service and BLM and 2 Lake County tribes to basically work on this very question of how can we be centering Indigenous voices in land stewardship in this area, and actually creating economic opportunities for folks to be sort of, you know, both paid and at the forefront of the conversation around this. So something that, yeah, I'm deeply committed to and have a lot to learn about.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. I know that of you, and appreciate your expression of that. So one of the other things that's come up on a couple of occasions is, how far away would it be useful to have acorns from? People are asking about, shipping them, and I think you'll have some things to say about that.
Yeah, so we're really hoping that the acorns can come as much as possible from, for planting back right now, we're planting in the Tomkai Creek area of Redwood Valley. And as much as possible, would be love to be planting back local genetics that are best adapted to that place. But the Acorn Bank is for everywhere in Mendocino County, mostly because we want to help actually get those acorns back out for planting. And wanting to, I think there's something really powerful about asking people to be out and gathering seeds and want to be inclusive in that way and then help get those seeds back out. So Mendocino County with a focus on Redwood Valley.
And I guess one of the things that you mentioned as well is that we are hoping to add to this with another informational video about, so if you do find that you have acorns and you're interested in working on oak regeneration on your own site, that's really useful. And we can give you our guidance on that. There are notes that go alongside this. It's on our main website for the Acorn Bank about how you could be planting the acorns that you're finding. But it is also pretty amazing to find all the creatures out there who are helping with that project, right? The scrub jays, all these other creatures who are working on assisting with that oak regeneration. We just wish that we were seeing more of those young oaks and medium-age oaks now. Okay, so I just wanted to comment, there are some great, it's great seeing all the chat here. So I hope I get the name right, Buffy Schmidt. So thank you for hosting. We do believe the first acorn drop is for the animals, all creatures, and we'll take only what we will use. And Buffy is from Sherwood Valley Rancheria, Yokayo Rancheria. And I think, Lindsay, that just came back to your point of do make the collections, but the points you made in the presentation about being really thoughtful about the acorns you're collecting, it can take quite a lot of time when done thoughtfully, and that really helps us on the other end. Would you want to add anything, Lindsay?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that when I'm gathering seeds in the fall, one of the things that I think about is, one, again, just only taking what I'm really committed to planting back. And I think that there's kind of like an agreement that's entered where when I'm gathering seeds, I will, ask permission of the plant, and I'll say, I'm borrowing you from your mother for now, and I'm going to keep you safe until the rains come and plant you back. And really, both with that asking permission and also acknowledging that, I'm a human intervening in this cycle, but hoping to do so in a way that's actually going to be life-giving to the seeds that are planted back. So I think that, yeah, just having that awareness and only taking what we can really follow through on that agreement with is a really important piece of it. Because it's easy to get excited and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these, and then overdo it and realize I have molding acorns. And yeah, just a piece of the thinking, I guess.
Yeah, we've just had a comment in the chat, which I think is interesting, and I don't know whether you would like to add more to this, Lindsay. I know Kate Marienchild sometimes helps out at some of the planting events and shares her lovely knowledge of the other creatures of the oak woodlands, but they were mentioning scrub jays. Our scrub jays plant hundreds of oak trees each year. Do you have any comments on all the other critters out there that are helping with our oak regeneration?
Yeah, I've heard stories about all kinds of critters planting back. And an elder of mine, Auntie Jeanette Acosta, who's Shumash down in Southern California, she talks a lot about the bears planting back the acorns. I'm sure that many critters are involved in that process, and I don't know a huge amount. Actually, you know what? Last year I saw crows for the first time planting acorns. That was cool, and their corvids along with the jays, so that didn't surprise me. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great. I also wondered, I've been seeing these great comments. Again, there's a wonderful one here. Well, there's a lot happening in the chat, so I have to just scroll to the right bit. Remember, our POMO people will be gathering our food, our medicine, our acorn. Be mindful. And I think that goes back to Lindsay's point and just is worth recognizing and referencing again.
Can I add something to that also? I'm really grateful for these comments, bringing just presencing the ongoing and deep relationship that local Native people have and have had for many millennia to these incredibly important trees. And yeah, it's something that I think is really important when really gathering any plant is, you know, to have a relationship with that place and to make sure that you have permission to be there. And, you know, if it's land that you have permission to be on, that's a good place to be gathering. And if it's not, you know, I've had a really difficult learning myself in being out in kind of a public land context and seeing a place that just like felt incredibly vibrant and alive and felt like it was asking for human relationship. And I gathered, and then I found out after the fact that that was actually a place that was already in relationship with Native people who had been tending that land. And I needed, you know, I had to go about making an apology and doing my best to kind of make that right. But it's important to remember that so much land is already in relationship with people, and just to make sure that you have permission to be there before you gather.
Great. I also wanted to bring up, there are some absolutely fabulous comments in here, and I'm trying to get all the ones that are rising up to the top and that enough people have joined in on. So one is from Peter Burby. He says, thank you, Lindsay, for a great presentation. Great to hear about what you were doing and your passion for the subject. And also, I wanted to make sure there was a little bit more from him. I'm going to go back and find. Peter, are you still on the call? Would you like to unmute for a second? I think maybe you had. Yeah, I see that you're there. If you want to unmute, I think you had a couple of other comments.
Oh yeah, thanks Lindsay for a great presentation. Yeah, I just look after the oak collection at the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne, and I was just interested in your comments when you started about studying in Spain with the Dehesa landscape, and just wondering whereabouts you studied there.
Yeah, I was in the kind of central eastern, you know, kind of valley that's called, the region's known as Extremadura, and it's very, very similar to California. I couldn't dig up my pictures of my visit while I was there, but I was able to study with Spanish biologists and folks who were out really working on oak woodland stewardship. And there's a group called Adinex that is doing a lot of amazing oak woodland restoration. And a really incredible professor that I found also, who's deeply looking at not just the biological restoration of the Dehesa system, but also looking at sort of the human relationship to the land. And it was really, I have to say, gosh, this is a whole nother conversation, but it was really profound for me to visit the land of my ancestors and to feel how similar the landscape is there to here, and to also see that their elders, their oak woodlands are in decline, and their elders have very similar stories to elders that I've heard speak here, which is that, you know, the trees are not being tended to and the acorns aren't being gathered, and so they're not producing and they're getting sick. And they have a disease called sudden oak death in Spain as well. That's a different Phytophthora, but is also killing their oaks. And it was really powerful to just to see these patterns kind of being repeated, and also really inspiring to meet people who were working really hard to keep the health of their oak woodlands. And yeah, gosh, so much to say about that one, but
since yeah. I don't want to cut in because I know that's worthy of a whole other
yeah, I know.
But
there's more.
Peter, thank you for joining us all the way from Melbourne. We really
thanks for being here
on the call, and I'm sure if you wish to link up with Lindsay afterwards, we can make sure we share emails. I also wanted just to add Buffy's comment, a new comment from Buffy Schmidt. We do need to keep gathering every year. If no one is gathering, the oak tree will not drop, or will drop fewer and fewer every year. That has been seen over years of gathering. It is important to gather. Yes, thank the oak for what they produce, saying prayers or provide an offering of song or prayer, Buffy Schmidt. I just wanted to make sure that we read that one out. There's that one, somebody had asked to make sure that we read that out. I do think there's an important question that's being asked about gathering off the ground or off the tree. I know you covered that a little in your presentation. So the Sacramento Tree Foundation recommends only collecting a small amount from any given tree. Also to not pull them off the tree unless the nut gives easily from the cap. Is this your approach?
Yeah, I would say that, oops, are y'all still there? Did I just do something?
We're still here, don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to collect off of the ground, and it's, if you try to gather them off of the tree, and this is just my experience, they'll either come off with the cap still on, which you don't want, or they'll fall off in your hands. So yeah, I would agree with that. And also I've definitely noticed that some trees just produce a lot more than others. And so how much you gather from each tree will depend on what's there. And I definitely would never gather everything from a particular tree.
I know there are notes that can go alongside your planting efforts, so and your gathering efforts. So those are all on the same website that I've linked in the chat. So Mendo Acorns, if you take a look, it's bit.ly, Mendo Acorns, you'll find some guidance notes there. And of course, if you have anything else to add to that, we'd love to hear from you too. So I'm seeing a few more about how to plant acorns. I'm aware that we're in the last 2 minutes, and I think my suggestion is that we will be following up on this with further information about planting. If you are gathering and maybe you've decided that actually planting on your own land, maybe you're not Mendocino County, so this project isn't for you, but you could be planting on your own lands, then we can follow up with another video to help with that. There was one question that I do think is important about, do we have to worry about disease and spreading of disease with the acorns?
Yeah, that's a great question. From my understanding, really the care around sudden oak death, that's the main disease that I think about when I think about oaks, although there are other pathogens, but the main thing with that is really just not leaving, well, there's a lot of different pieces to it. As far as acorns, I don't think that you can actually spread Phytophthora through acorns themselves. If you are, walking around on a site where there is sudden oak death and you get spores on your shoes or they're in the leaves and you move the leaves, then you can spread it. And so it is important to be really careful of that. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but sometimes at parks, they have like a place where you can like dip your feet in to clean your feet so you're not spreading the disease. It's like a bleach solution or something so that you're not accidentally introducing disease into the area. But from my understanding, and I can double check on this and maybe we'll add it to the website because it is a really good question, but I don't think you can spread it with the acorns themselves.
I know we did look into this last year, Lindsay, and I remember going to some of the researchers who've been involved in work here, and that was the understanding. But of course, there's always more work to be done, and it's worth us checking back in again this year. So it's 11:45, and I don't want to keep people for any longer than they've signed up for. I do think it's been fabulous. Lindsay, I want to say a huge thank you to you, but I also want to say a massive thank you to all the people who've been participating. We've had so many wonderful voices, so many great questions, and so much more knowledge added in the conversation here. So thank you to all of you for attending and raising some really important points. We will keep updating that website with the next event that we'll have about planting oaks on your own land, on the acorns yourselves, and any other questions that might have come up that we haven't answered today. So thank you very much to everybody.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in and also say thank you, and thanks to everyone who's showing up here because you love the oaks and you love the land and are looking for good ways to give back. And also want to give particular thanks to the folks participating from Native California communities. It sounded like there were a few voices there, and feel really grateful for your presence and the points that you raised. And if anyone wants to reach out to me for questions, or if you have feedback on the presentation or suggestions on how to better engage local Native communities, I really want to welcome that feedback. So thank you everybody for being here.
All right, we're going to be here just for a couple more minutes. Everybody feel free to sign off, but if you did have a question that's really burning, I think Lindsay and I don't mind hanging out for just a few minutes.
I don't mind.
Great. And yes, this will be available as a recording. I see that in the chat. So I'll be adding that both to the Facebook event that was up and also to the main website. Just give me a few days.
Yeah, there's a question, I think, on planting tan oaks, and that is a great question. For this particular project, we will not be planting tan oaks because in most of the places, the sites that we're working with, the tan oaks are either doing fine or they resprout from the base. And so a lot of the tan oaks are either resprouting. We didn't see a huge amount of mortality in this particular fire with the tan oaks, so we're not prioritizing them. It's more the deciduous oaks that seem to be struggling in this particular context.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for all of the help today and for all of the voices that joined us, and we'll be having more information on the website. Goodbye to all.
Take care, everybody.